Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Meet the Azure AD B2C team. We are looking forward to spending some time with you today going through all of the questions that you've got, so that way we can better address questions you have around B2C. So what we'll be covering here today, we'll go through some team introductions, and then largely it will just be a Q&A session where you can ask any questions you have about Azure AD B2C, and we'll go through and answer those questions as we get them. In regards to how to engage, so this is a Teams live event, so please use the chat box to ask your questions. Feel free to post anonymously or use your name if you'd like to. As you ask your questions, they'll appear to everyone once we approve and publish them, and then as they come into the chat and you can see them, upvote the questions so that way we know what's important to you, and we'll use that to go through and choose which questions we answer first. We will have people who answer verbally, and like I said, we'll answer the most popular questions, so make sure you use those upvotes. We will record this session as well, so that way you can check it out on demand. Help our moderators out, don't spam the chat. If you see that there's a question that comes in, upvote that question if you have a similar question instead of asking yourself. And then lastly, please adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct, which you can see on the screen now. So jumping right in, we've got a large number of experts from the Azure AD B2C team here today, and we are very excited to be able to answer all of the questions that you have. We'll try and get through as many as we can, but definitely we'll continue the conversation and show you how you can continue the conversation at the end of the session if we don't get to your question. Like I said, a large number of experts here today. You can see that we've got people representing the different areas of Azure AD B2C. So any questions you have, feel free to put them in the chat. Like I said, we'll publish them, upvote them, and we'll spend some time answering. I've gone ahead and put some things up to kind of give you some ideas as to what you can ask us about, but definitely asking us things limited to this list is not the case. You can ask anything around B2C. So the first thing I want to start us off with is we've heard a lot of questions on this particular topic in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, we announced the public preview of Azure AD external identities, and we're getting a lot of questions around what is the difference between external identities, B2C, and when should I choose one or the other? So I'm going to first send it over to Robin Goldstein, so that way she can give us a little bit more detail on external identities and B2C, and when you should use both of those things. So thanks, Robin.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, and thanks for the great intro, and really appreciate everybody being with us today, both the team members and everybody who tuned in for this Ask the Expert session. So I'm Robin Goldstein, as Josh said. I work in the identity team, and I'm a group program manager working on external identities, also authentication experience for our entire identity platform. And I can say that I'm just so excited about this question because it's our vision to provide one identity platform that protects and secures your apps for all of your users. And this week's announcement about Azure AD external identities, it's a part of our journey towards this vision. The features in the public preview are designed to help you extend the enterprise-grade identity experience of Azure AD to your apps, especially those that are partner, vendor, supplier, or facing other types of external users where the accounts are from outside an organization. Today in the public preview, Azure AD external identity supports a self-service experience for your users, which means they can sign up with different types of user accounts. It's a straightforward experience for doing some lightweight branding and authentication experience customizations. It's got a fixed set of identity providers today, although that's something we're looking to improve in the very near future. Google and Facebook and some other identity providers that we've had support for today traditionally in our B2B platform are there available for you to use in your apps. Plus a new capability to call external APIs so you can extend the auth experience with processes for ID verification, for approvals, and those kinds of things that we know your apps are often called upon to do. Azure AD B2C, which we consider kind of part of the external identities family. It's a great solution for your customer-facing apps, especially when you need a higher degree of control over the user experience and the visual presentation. And it provides the best directory solution if you happen to be targeting like a really huge user base. It's awesome at like hundreds of millions of scale, and we've really done a lot of work over the years to optimize for that case.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. So we've got a lot of questions in the chat, so let me just scroll through. I see that there's one pretty highly voted one around, is there self-service password reset for B2C? Jose, would you mind spending a few moments talking about self-service password reset in B2C and how that works?
There you go. Now I'm not muted. Yes, so thanks, Josh, for the opportunity. As a quick introduction, I'm a PM in the identity, specifically within Azure B2C, and working on some of our platforms, such as custom policies and some platforms as we blend some of the capabilities of B2C into AD. So the question specifically answers yes. Right. So certainly the ability to create a user flow that allows a password reset for a customer, and really properly called would be a password recovery, as it creates a journey where a customer is asked to do an MFA or confirm the access to an email via code, and then able to provide a new password that is compliant with whatever password rules are in effect at the time. That's a fairly quick answer. Hopefully that helps.
Awesome.
Back to you, Josh.
Thanks, Jose. All right, still looking through more of the questions. Another really highly upvoted one is the direction Microsoft is taking with regards to B2C and the Microsoft authentication libraries. Jean-Marc, would you mind spending a few moments talking about the authentication libraries and what we're doing with B2C there?
Sure. So Microsoft authentication libraries, MSAL in short, fully support B2C. So all the MSALs are capable of acquiring tokens, signing in users. B2C is always about users, so signing in users with B2C. With MSAL, we'll have let's say a few number of lines of code to change to compared to an Azure AD application. With external identity, you would not even have this change to do. We also have a new member of the Microsoft authentication libraries named Microsoft Identity Web, which makes it easy to create web apps signing in users and web API, protected web API, both being able to call or not, depending on your needs, downstream APIs. And this also supports B2C very naturally. You don't even have any code change to do between Azure AD and Azure AD B2C, just configuration. And by the way, that was Jean-Marc. I'm a PM in for the authentication libraries.
Great. Thanks, Jean-Marc.
Josh?
Yeah.
We have a lot of questions around MFA and pricing with MFA, and also if there will be other options available for MFA with B2C in the future, like FIDO support.
Sure.
I'm not sure who should answer that.
Yeah. Jose, I know you.
I'd be glad to jump in, Josh, with
a
portion of it, and then perhaps our colleague Pawan can speak to the licensing. So in terms of our MFA support, as you all know, we currently support SMS or voice-based sending a code via voice. The very next thing, and this is something that just recently, as yesterday, I was testing, we will add the ability to use the MFL round trip, a code sent via an email in lieu of an MFA. We know many of you have situations where you have not previously collected phone numbers, and all you have is an email to mitigate when MFA is required. Right after that, the next thing the team has been architecting is the use of Authenticator. We unfortunately don't have a timeline for that, but as we look into our Q1, Q2, basically over the next 6 months, it's a very high candidate the team has been evaluating to use MS Authenticator. I should say that we do have support or are able to work with other Authenticator applications such as Google Authenticator and Authy, since they have open APIs to complete an MFA journey, and they also provide cost-free MFA. But MFA Authenticator would be coming, MS Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator would be coming sometime after that. Hopefully it addresses, and maybe Pawan, I send it to you for questions about the cost.
Yes, sure. So there is a question that asks, is it right that B2C is completely free if you don't use multi-factor authentication and the amount of our MAU is under 50,000? So the answer to that, quick answer to that is yes. So if your monthly active usage is under 50,000, there are no hidden costs. You would still have to pay the $0.03 or 3 cents for MFA from the first usage, so that doesn't count for the 50,000. And there are no hidden costs, just confirming that. And just to introduce myself, I'm Pawan Narasimha. I'm a program manager on the external identities and specifically the B2C team.
Great. Thanks, Pawan. So, Adam, I think I'll direct this question to you. So we have a question in the chat that's got a pretty good number of upvotes around. We're looking at a product for a central user management solution. With this product, we want to register all apps which support OpenID and OAuth 2, and we want to authenticate employees, dealers, customers, and partners with this product. Is Azure AD the right choice for this?
Hi, yeah, that's a great question. My name is Adam Stoffel. I'm from the Identity Customer Experience team. So I would say that absolutely, the Microsoft Identity Platform can serve all of those needs for you. For employees and for partner scenarios, Azure Active Directory and external identities, which is newly announced for Azure Active Directory, is a great solution there. And for your customer scenarios, which require a deeper level of customization or perhaps white labeling, that would be a great choice for Azure AD B2C. There's a great way that you can connect Azure AD B2C. So for applications that need to support all of those different types of user groups, you can authenticate both folks from your enterprise directory and your external identities users, as well as your customer users, that B2C use case, through the Azure AD B2C product. All of the components within our Microsoft Identity Platform use open standards, as you mentioned, like OAuth 2, OpenID Connect, and SAML for integration with applications.
Great. Yeah, and then to stick with you, Adam, because there's another one that's similar. So I have a multi-tenant application with many customers. I want a standard set of roles in each tenant with corresponding sets of permissions granted to the role and its members. I want to add users in each tenant to these roles and grant them permissions. I want to authorize the actions in my app on the permissions connected to the roles. Can this scenario be accomplished with B2C?
Also a really interesting question. So we see our customers using Azure AD B2C in a variety of interesting ways when it comes to different types of authorization scenarios, which is, hopefully I can answer that question this way. I think that's related to authorization. So you can assign different types of attributes to your users within the directory, and that could be role information, for example, or connect your B2C authentication pipeline to an external service if that's where your role or authorization information is stored. You can then expose that authorization information to your applications through the use of claims, so that your applications, which are claims aware, can make decisions on how to authorize specific actions within the application based on that information. If you have more sort of custom or interesting logic around how those roles may translate into specific permissions, or the way that those roles are applied to certain applications, that's a great use case for Identity Experience Framework and the policies that you can author there. There's a large amount of tooling that's available in IEF to translate maybe specific role information or attributes about users into the specific types of permissions or claims information which your application needs in order to make those authentication decisions or access decisions.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam. So Jose, I'm going to direct this next one to you because I'm seeing a couple of questions around this in the chat. So are there any plans for B2C to support the use of custom domains?
Yes. So thanks, Josh. Let's refine custom domains as domains that are of the nature of, let's take one of our customers that has publicly divulged as Subway, and the fact is that this is supported in some cases, and that is that Subway has decided that id.subway.com is the domain they use and expose in their application to access a B2C user flow or a B2C user journey for authentication. The support that we have for that, unfortunately, today is limited, and we've only been able to apply that to a few hundred customers. We have in our backlog some additional work that will be required to be able to do this in a self-serve manner. I will say, for those of you who have worked with account managers at Microsoft or who work with our customers via GTP, make this request and we'll do our best to fulfill it. But just be aware that it is unfortunately limited by a number of technical and support reasons. In order to make it broadly available, we have some additional work that we don't yet have a date for. Happy to have others bring any additional knowledge, but to the degree that it's essential for your business, reach out to us and let us know, and we'll do our best to see if we can fulfill it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. So looking through the questions. So the other one, sorry, Jose, I should have left you queued up. We've got a question around, it seems that B2C user flows have been flagged as preview forever. When will we finally bring user flows out of preview, and what will be done going forward to make sure that features do not stay in preview for excessively long periods of time?
Josh, do you mind if I take that one?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Robin.
Do I have to undo my video? Yeah, thanks a lot for that question. So we definitely hear and acknowledge that some of the B2C features have been in public preview for a while. One thing I wanted to make sure everybody here understands, one of the reasons we keep features in public preview is because we strive for a quality bar. And that's important to us before we can take something to a GA level of quality. At the same time, specifically with regards to the user flows feature, I do want to let this audience know that we are actively investing on bringing that feature set to GA this year. And so look forward to sharing more with you when we're ready to release that set of capabilities. But we're definitely aware that that's been in preview for a while. We've been making some improvements. We've been driving towards a quality bar for those, and we hope to get those out to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Robin. So Jose, I'm seeing another one that would probably be pretty good to have you answer. So are there any plans on making B2C custom policies a little easier to configure in the future? So right now it's complex and you've got to understand the XML files to be able to use those custom policies.
You bet. So we acknowledge, first of all, that it certainly is complicated to configure. And we know that because we have seen so many of you who have become experts in it, teach us a few lessons about how to do it well. So my apologies for that. We are currently not thinking about changing the XML format itself. We have been investing in it and progressively adding some more capability. We are going to add, I'm going to mention one of the features that we have currently in private preview, the ability to use something called sub-journeys that will allow a better way of breaking apart a long user journey in a way that is more readable more shareable across developers, but it doesn't really address the core complexity problem. We do, you will see that we are increasing, and we have some features even coming very quickly in user flows, so that you don't, fear of you have to move from the user flow version of things to the custom policy. A couple of examples for that will be the ability to do phone-based sign up and sign in. And the second thing I would mention is the ability to bring some API connectors into the environment of the user flow, because that's one of the two big reasons. Those are two big reasons why folks actually go to the custom policy environment in the XML. Hopefully that addresses that question. But no, we're not looking to change that core element of the platform at this time.
Awesome. Thank you. So Abhishek, I'm going to go to you for this one because I see a couple of questions around automating B2C tenant creation in the CI/CD process. Would you mind spending a few minutes talking about what's possible there and how customers can do that? Abhishek, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Josh, for letting me know. Yeah, hi. So regarding CI/CD processes, what we have available today is that applications, service principals, and other custom policies and policy keys can be created via the APIs. Tenant creation APIs, we are the documentation, we are about to publish those APIs. And for rest of things, they are on roadmap, but not out. So if you are using custom policies, you can basically automate every aspect of custom policy deployment as of now.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Abhishek. So we've got a lot of questions, just looking through to find the next one that we'll ask.
Hi, Josh. There's a question on login with Apple support for B2C. I believe that's in preview right now. Just asking if this will be like, so probably the support will look for this feature moving forward.
Yeah, sure. Adam, I know that you've got some info you've created in the past about sign in with Apple. Would you mind explaining what customers can do today to support that?
Sure. So signing with Apple today uses a process that's very, very close to OpenID Connect. You can set up sign in with Apple as a custom OpenID Connect provider. And we do have a sample for how that works on the GitHub community samples for Azure Active Directory B2C.
Great, thank you. And then Pawan, seeing a few questions around Azure AD B2C and if it will be available, if and when it will be available in Azure Government.
So specifically in the US, we do have B2C available in the government cloud. We call it Arlington. It's in public preview right now. So you should feel free to go and spin up a B2C tenant. The billing capability, or it's still free to use today, for B2C tenants. We didn't enable the billing capability yet, and no timelines on GA as of now, but we'll let you know when we do have that.
Great, thank you. So I think this is a good one that will answer questions for a lot of people. So seeing questions around like how samples for customization and essentially a repository that makes different things B2C can do available as examples. So Adam, would you talk a little bit about the B2C samples repository that we have and what customers can do with that?
Sure. So we actually have up on, I'm just pulling up my my URL here so I can share it. If you go to github.com/azure-ad-b2c, that's our Azure AD B2C community GitHub organization. And you can find there a number of different interesting samples for a variety of use cases. One of the core or main repositories that's there, which is sort of a landing page for all of our custom policy samples, which illustrate specific patterns for how to achieve certain things using custom policies and identity experience framework, is going to be probably right up there at the top when you get to that organization, because it's updated frequently. It's the samples repository. And there you can find, I think there's probably about 40, maybe 50 different interesting samples for things like conditional multi-factor authentication, different types of role-based access control, integration with other types of MFA providers, for example. And then there's another other repositories within that directory which have perhaps specific sample applications and policies for other identity providers, or things like how to perform a seamless just-in-time migration from a previous identity provider. So I would highly recommend that you check out that GitHub repository. There's a lot of great content there. And we also welcome pull requests or issues if you find them within that community.
Great, thank you so much. So Adam, I'll stay with you for just a moment because this is similar to the sample repository and an example I know is there. So we've got a question around when will Azure AD B2C support authenticator apps in FIDO for multi-factor authentication? Could you talk a little bit about what's possible today?
Sure. So in addition to SMS and voice-based multi-factor authentication, which is one of the core capabilities within B2C today, we have a number of those samples there which illustrate different patterns for integrating other types of MFA. So I think Jose earlier mentioned the Authy app as one example. We have other, for example, partners that we work with, such as Trusona, which has a white label push notification service. We also have examples there for how to perform email-based multi-factor authentication, or use a code generator application like Microsoft Authenticator to perform multi-factor auth. So those are a number of the different kinds of samples that you can find there on how to do that. And I know that, and FIDO was part of that question, right? So there's also an example there for how you could enable FIDO using the same type of pattern.
Great, thank you so much. So Jose, I'm gonna send this one to you. So we've got a question around conditional access with B2C and what essentially what they can do with conditional access in their B2C apps and what may be coming.
You bet. Happy to answer that, and thank you. Well, we have been working for some time with our partners at the identity protection team, focusing on bringing the risk signals and the ability to mitigate those high-risk sign-ins and high-risk users using all the available tools of B2C to wit email-based MFA, SMS or voice-based MFA, or giving you the ability to use some other alternative second factor, much like Adam mentioned a few minutes ago. What you can currently do, unfortunately, is not much. We currently have a few customers in a private preview, and what we've implemented is basically the ability to create a conditional access policy, much in exactly the same way as you would in AAD. So when you think in terms of what's coming, think of the ability to create a conditional access policy in the same way you currently do in AAD, with the same types of choices around users, groups, application selection, types of risk, high, medium, low, and then a mitigation. Clearly, the mitigation side is somewhat more limited because things like device-based authentication, or things like whether a user is synced or not, are not appropriate on the B2C side. But you will be able to create these connections in conditional access. In terms of our timeline, which I know is the obvious question, we are currently shooting for being able to get into public preview at the beginning of our next quarter. right? So early in the and our quarter begins in July. So early in the July through August timeframe, we expect to be able to expose this to you, and we will probably do it in a staged fashion. But we'll begin with risk-based policies, followed by some of the location policies, followed by some other of the conditional policies. But we're looking to have parity with what you're able to see today in AAD. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Jose. So Ed, I'll send this one to you, and it seems like a great question that people could benefit from as they're using Azure AD B2C. So how would you implement a production, staging, and test environment with Azure AD B2C?
Yeah, thanks. I'll be happy to answer that. So my name is Ed Wu. I'm also on the B2C team. So Abhishek briefly mentioned we have some tenant creation APIs coming. The other pieces that you'll need, so once you've created the tenant, there's other things you'll need, such as creating the policy keys, the application, and also you'll need to be able to grant admin consent to the apps to do the appropriate actions. So we have existing APIs for that set of functions or workflows. So there's so to do the different environments, we have almost everything. The missing one is the B2C creation APIs, which will be forthcoming. So once you have that, we can have a complete workflow with the APIs. And once we have the complete set, we plan to also publish some samples exactly how to do that end-to-end deployment cycle, and so you can manage the life cycle of each of those environments.
Great, thank you. So Robin or Jose, I'll send this one to you guys. So it seems like a lot of common scenarios can be implemented with B2C, but only with custom policies. Will we ever be able to implement these scenarios with standard configurations available out of the box?
I'll defer to Robin on this one.
Hi everyone.
Hi,
and yeah, I mean, I think Jose or any of us could have answered this one equally well. We're definitely continuing to invest in adding more and more standard capabilities configurable out of the box, both in B2C as well as in external identities. Since you asked a very broad question, I don't know if we're going to be enabling the exact features or scenarios that you're looking to have us support, but I can tell you, along with the user flows work that we talked about earlier, as a part of that, we are continuously adding new features to what can be configured via the portal and also via our Graph API out of the box. So that's definitely something we're continuing to do. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Jose.
No, not too much to add. I'm encouraged. Well, let me add this. I think it's, as you see the amazing work that it's coming forward on the external ID side, you will see features there that the team is already in a user flow format that the team is also going to add on the B2C and vice versa. So it's really exciting set of developments there. Just adding as evidence to what Robin just said. So stay alerted to that and take a close look at that great work in external identity.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Adam, I'll come back to you with this one. Do we have any guidance or worked up examples of setting up multi-tenant scenarios? Our customers are small and medium-sized businesses, and they need to be able to manage their own group of users inside the bigger B2C instance.
Sure. So that's also a really great question. There's a few approaches that we can recommend for handling this, and there's some considerations to think about for each one. So for some of those multi-tenant scenarios where you have a variety of different customers that you're supporting with a B2C solution, you have a couple of options. If you have a relatively small number of customers with perhaps a large number of users in each customer, you may consider setting up separate B2C directories for each of those customers. And that provides you with sort of a siloed instance of B2C to use with each one of your customers, where you can, for example, separate out some of the management operations and things like that. You can still deploy basically the same policies to each tenant using the IEF policies and some of the deployment tools that we have available for that. You can tokenize your policies to each tenant and then deploy those there. If you're supporting perhaps a large number of customers with a relatively small number of users per customer, it may make more sense to use a single directory. In that scenario, typically what you'd be looking at if you need to provide a management layer for users on top of that is building some kind of a custom application which interacts with the Microsoft Graph API to perform different types of user management operations. Our goal, of course, with Azure AD B2C is that it shouldn't be a heavy burden for those user management experiences, that you can build a lot of self-service options for users so that they can perform the vast majority of their account functions themselves. But hopefully that kind of provides some additional context around different ways that you might support that type of scenario.
Thanks, Adam. So, Jean-Marc, I'll go to you with this one just because I know this is a hot topic. So we've got a question about the auth-code flow for single-page apps, and will B2C support that? So I know there's been some work done recently around updating single-page apps and auth-code flow. Could you expand a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So far, msal.javascript, msal.js was only supporting the hybrid flow, and that was not working very well in Safari because of the Safari ITP blocking for privacy reason. That was blocking some cookies which were needed. So we have implemented indeed the auth-code flow plus Pixie and Course, which now works. That will unblock all the customers who were blocked by the ITP problem in Safari. And it's supported by Azure AD, and it's coming also to Azure AD B2C. So this is work in progress.
Great. Thanks, Jean-Marc. So looking through the questions. So we've got a question, Jose, I'll send to you. The question is there support plan for users to be able to update or change their login email or username?
So we currently have the ability to do that using custom policies only. Certainly, this is probably a feature we've I'll say for myself, I might have overlooked in terms of bringing it to user flows. And as a result of your question, and others here on the call will have to take another look so that is supported more commonly in user flows. So it is not currently that I'm aware in the roadmap. Maybe Paolo can tell us otherwise, but it is something we should really go back and look at so that it can be done in an easier way, as we know there's a need for it. Okay.
Great. Thank you. And Jose, since I've got you, I see one more question in the chat around, is it possible or a best practice to federate between a SAML IDP and B2C, or would regular Azure AD be more suited for this use case?
Well, I would answer by saying first that it is possible in both Azure AD and in Azure AD B2C. Feel comfortable with that path. It has been a GA in Azure AD forever, and it has been GA in B2C for probably about 1.5 years. So it's a well-worn path. We have between thousands to hundreds of thousands of customers who use it. Make your decision of the two products based on other criteria that are probably more material. And I would just quickly say some of the criteria might be which applications do you want this users to use. Could be quite material because we know that there are limitations on the B2C side as to which apps are accessible. Make your decision based on what is the nature of these users. We certainly know that there's a very rich set of scenarios that we have for employees, for partners, collaborative situations that so many of our customers really now in the range of millions use. And there are patterns that are more appropriate for a consumer type or citizen type application that is somewhat limited in terms of the number of applications, but provides you a few additional things that are in B2C and not in AD. So in other words, make the decision for another reason, because SAML ADP is equally supported. Okay.
Thanks, Jose. Sorry, looking through.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
Hi. Can someone comment on MS Graph and B2C support?
Sure. Adam, is that something?
I can, but what is the specific? I have been responding to the questions. What is the specific question?
It's just on a timeline on B2C support with MS Graph.
Okay, so this was the exact question that we were discussing just now, that for custom policies, we have all those constructs already available on MS Graph. For built-in user flows, they are on the roadmap. So yeah, there's a work in progress. So if you're using custom policies, you're good to go, basically.
Great. Thanks, Abhishek.
I'll also call out that there's some other enhancements that we have made to the Microsoft migrating certain pieces of functionality over to the Microsoft Graph. In case this question was with regards to certain functionality that was only available in the Azure AD Graph previously. So for example, a number of user operations that were previously only possible in the Azure AD Graph are now available in the Microsoft Graph. And then, as Abhishek mentioned, a number of new policy and tenant configuration capabilities are there in the Microsoft Graph as well. And there's a specific, for anyone that's looking for a specific reference on that, on our B2C docs page, if you go kind of all the way down to the last section or second to last section, I believe it's called reference, there's a section there which shows all of the Microsoft Graph API operations that are relevant to Azure AD B2C.
Great, thank you. John Mark, I'll ask this question to you. So I see a question around customers are using the ADAL libraries still in their applications, and they're curious about what the plans are those, and should they be looking at moving to IMSAL instead?
Question for me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, can you repeat the question? Sorry, I was answering questions.
I can answer. I mean, it's about ADAL support, which ADAL never supported B2C, but where are we at with the ADAL libraries and deprecation of those, and what are the recommendations for MSAL? Jean-Marc, do you want to answer that?
To answer what? Deprecation?
So we're currently deprecating support for ADAL, so that's in the works right now. ADAL never supported B2C as it was for the V1 endpoint. So recommendation is use the Microsoft authentication libraries, MSAL libraries moving forward.
Always use MSAL. For anything you do, if you have a new application, this is MSAL.
Just to clarify, ADAL never supported B2C. So if you want to integrate your application with Azure AD B2C, you can only use MSAL library.
So looking through some more questions. Pawan, I see a question around licensing. So as private previews that have been discussed become available, will we need to extend our licensing from our Azure AD tenant to our B2C tenant to be able to get all the functionality there? What is the licensing model today, and how do we get those licenses?
Can you repeat the question again, Josh? So maybe let me rephrase. I can't see it on the chat window here, but So the question is there a connection between the licensing model of AAD and B2C? And
Yes.
how? Okay, got it. So just to step back a little, so AAD is today is a licensing model, which means that you pre-purchase your licenses for the seats for the P1 or P2 tiers accordingly. Whereas B2C is a consumption-based model, so you're actually post-paying at the end of the month based on your monthly active usage. For new customers, there are some B2C customers, legacy customers, who are still on the authentication-based billing, which means they are billed per authentication of a user. We believe, and looking at the data today, that all those customers, if they could move over to or migrate to the MAU or the monthly active user based billing, and you have the option to opt into this model, it's much more price makes much more price sense to you. It's much cheaper for you based on the data we are looking at. So we encourage you to make that move. But in terms of is there a connection between the licensing model and B2C? They're two distinct models that you can choose separately.
Great, thank you. So, looking through the chat, looks like a lot of questions have been answered in the chat.
We have a question on iOS embedded browser with Google login is failing, which I can answer.
Sure.
So this is interesting with, this is actually an issue with Google. Google a few years ago said they would no longer allow embedded WebView logins with the Google Auth. And the reason for that is because when you're signing in, say into your mobile device on an application and the WebView is embedded, if you have a bad application, it could actually record the keystrokes of the user as they put in their username and password. And so that's why an embedded WebView is less secure, because you have to trust the application that they're a good application and they're not actually stealing your credentials as you're signing in, which is why the MSAO libraries also support system browser sign-in. So you can sign in with the system browser, which creates an external dialog from the application. So the authorization server, in this case, Azure AD B2C, will actually present the user with a sign-in dialog that's external to the application, and the user's having a private conversation with the authorization server outside of the application. So the problem with embedded WebView is that a bad app could actually record the keystrokes of as you type in your username and password, which is why Google does not allow embedded WebView. We did have like a contract with Google where they would allow login.microsoftonline.com as a secure IDP to accept logins from. But with the switch to B2C login.com or a custom domain, we no longer have that allowance. So that's why if you are using B2C and Google Auth, you want to make sure to use a system browser sign-in and not embedded WebView.
Great, that's great info. So Adam, I see a question in the chat around how to get started with B2C. So someone linked to a guide, but what would your recommendations be for how a customer can get started with B2C?
Sure, great question also. For that, I would recommend, we have a docs page. There's a couple of sort of the initial getting started docs pages on Microsoft Docs for Azure AD B2C, which describe sort of an overview of the service, some of the core capabilities that are there. I would usually recommend then kind of going from that point and trying out the built-in user flows. Create a couple of user flows, see how the password reset experience works, see how multi-factor works, try adding a few different identity providers there, and get familiar with the way that that works. If you have an intention or you need to go into the identity experience framework and start building custom policies, the next steps there would be there are a couple of additional docs articles which describe how to get your tenant set up so that you can start using custom policies. and kind of an introduction to what those custom policies look like. We also have a white paper. So there's a section in our docs articles called Solutions and Training. There's a couple of articles there on how to do that. And we also have a couple of YouTube videos that we've recently launched. So if you do a search on YouTube for Azure AD B2C, you'll find a couple of short videos there, which cover many of those topics in a video format as well, if that's a little bit easier way for you to learn and take in that information.
Great, thank you. So I see this one, and Abhishek or Ed, I'll go to you guys for it. Can you share best practices for B2C in regards to DevOps, infrastructure as code, and managing multiple, maybe short-lived dev or staging tenants?
Yeah, I can take this one, sure. So yeah, I think it varies, of course, on what your requirements are. Generally speaking, most of our customers persist their environments because there's a need for a dev, test, QA, or in production environment. However, there are some of our customers who need to very quickly set up and tear down some environments that mirror one of the other more persistent states. For example, developer team may want to do some quick integration, so they want to quickly stand up an environment and then do their testing, application development and testing and prototyping, and then when they're done, move it on to one of the more persistent states. More persistent stated environments, and then tear down and dispose of the other previous one. So, so app management, APIs, the policy and the policy keys that are related to the B2C tenant environment are needed. And as we mentioned, the one that we need that'll be forthcoming is the tenant creation piece. So then your organization could provide a self-service way for developers to come in to get their environment and tear it down very quickly. And then that way you can manage the life cycle of both a more iterative environment where people need to have these quickly and the more persistent ones as well. Abhishek, do you want to add any other thoughts?
No, you summarized really well. It also depends on the customer requirement of how many tenants or whatever do they have, but you summarized pretty well. Yeah.
Great, thanks guys.
Josh, we are having a frequent question of how an Azure AD B2C tenant can connect to B2B functionalities or a regular Azure AD tenant.
Mm-hmm.
So we should clarify that also maybe.
Yeah, I'll definitely. That's a great question. So sorry, I must have missed one in the chat.
Sure. So multiple questions are being asked that how if you have like scenarios where you have customers or users coming from an Azure AD tenant in which Office resources are being used or for some other reason, but your consumer tenant is Azure AD B2C. So how can you relate those two tenants and can use them? So Azure AD B2C has OpenID, custom OpenID connect providers. Using that feature, you can basically create an application in your Azure AD tenant and then can use that application to like connect an Azure AD B2C tenant to an Azure AD tenant. So we already have a public documentation. It's a GA feature in both custom policies and B2C user flows. So feel free to use that. And yeah, so that should suffice maximum scenarios. But if there anything else, feel free to post here on the Stack Overflow.
Great. Thanks, Abhishek. Jose, I'll go to you on this one. So we've got a question around how can I provide a terms of service flow, a complete flow that actually stores terms of service and validates that the user accepted? How can that be achieved, and what are the options there?
You bet. So in terms of use, let me call out first something that we unfortunately do not support. You might be aware that Azure Active Directory does have an ability to collect terms of use in a standard approach across the Azure Active Directory tenant. Unfortunately, B2C does not support that modality. We have found that the customers using B2C all have varying needs to collect this information and store it. So specifically to how to achieve it, I'll just give you just a quick way to think about it. It involves having an extension attribute that stores the state. Often the state is true or false, or the state is actually a date that says when it was accepted, so you can later check whether it is still current and not expired from a terms of use perspective. Second, it would take using a custom policy that would actually read this attribute, and based on the attribute, go ahead and ask the customer to accept, and if the customer accepts recorded in that extension attribute that I mentioned earlier. And basically every subsequent sign-in checks this attribute for either the Boolean true or false, or checks for the date, whether the data is not within a certain expiration date. We've seen quite a few customers do this and achieve it very consistently. It is also possible to store the terms of use, this is also a typical case, together in some external repository that has all the situations that a customer has needed, that stores all the terms of use across multiple different things, not just this application. It could be other things related to the service. So those two are valid. I wonder if Adam or Ed, you have something to add there, as both of you have, I know, implemented this with customers.
Yeah, it's exactly as you described, Jose. So if you want to see a sample of that, we have it on our GitHub sample repository for the terms of use. And it does exactly that. It records the terms of use acceptance date, and has versioning, and it'll prompt the user to reconfirm acceptance if there's a new version, etc. So we have a sample of that in our GitHub repository. I'll put the link again and share that out where the samples are.
So we've probably got time for one more question or so, and Abhishek, I'll go to you with this one. The question is around, what is the best practice for debugging custom policies? So it's difficult to debug the XML, and using App Insights logs and user journeys are cryptic. What should customers be doing to debug, and what are we doing to improve the debug experience?
I think Jose would be the right person, but I can definitely give something on this.
Oh,
so the current, Jose, do you want to take it?
No, so I think that many of us who have worked with that would add. Let's just first acknowledge that yes, it is a challenge, right? It is challenging. I think that what we have seen, rest assured, the following. Number one, we have in excess of over, let's just say, several thousand customers who are actively using custom policies successfully and developing some high value added scenarios that they are essential to their business processes. So you will be in good company. Number two, we mentioned in the call a number of samples. And last count, I counted over 55 different scenarios that the team has documented. And it is our hope that you find just the scenario you're looking for. And without having to deeply dive into the intricacies of this complex methodology, you're able to leverage those for your scenarios. And the last thing I would say is that we have designed our starter pack so you can start very simple. So the combination of starter pack and one of these pre-existing samples, we hope gets very close to what you want, and then progressively make only small incremental changes to it, using specifically App Insights as a way to give you visibility into what's happening in the custom policy. We understand that in addition to complexity, there's also the concern of visibility as to what's kind of happening under the hood, and App Insights gives you a very good view. That's what I would suggest to you. Certainly there are other practitioners, and I go back again to folks like Adam, folks like Ed, that have spent a lot of time in this and might have something to add.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks
Okay.
a lot. So we are at time, but definitely thank you all for coming and joining the Meet the Azure AD B2C team. We'd love to hear how we did and what you thought of the session. So please fill out your evaluations. And then definitely for more information around Azure AD B2C, check out all of our documentation. And then, like I said, continue the conversation, continue to ask your questions to us by using the B2C Stack Overflow. So you can always reach us there with your questions, and we're happy to help. So thanks everyone for joining, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your experience at Build.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.